Damascus, January 1965. A radio key sits on the desk. The window for a short burst is 2 minutes. 2 men wait on the stairs and watch the corridor light cycle. Noise from the street covers the first click. Timing is good, but if the signal runs long, triangulation starts. The man inside is Eliyahu Eli Cohen, Mossad deep cover asset operating as Kamal Amin Thaabet. Send, confirm, clear the room, and leave before the building wakes. It started when maps and intercepted traffic could not answer the questions that mattered, and planners asked for something riskier than lenses or wires. They needed a person who belonged in the rooms where officers relaxed and spoke as if nothing was at stake. In the early 1960s, Damascus moved on conversation more than on memos. Borders held soldiers and wire, but private salons traded favors and hints. Photos drew lines and bunkers. They did not say who would move next month, which convoy would change routes, or why a specific colonel pushed an exercise forward. Reports arrived with gaps that no aircraft or dish could close. The request hardened into a narrow aim. Build a guest who passed as local, poured drinks, and left with details people share when they feel safe. Recruiters wrote a profile that mixed language, restraint, and social ease. The right man would read a room without notes, accept long stretches of small talk, and know when silence creates trust. Training drilled memory, short transmissions, and the habit of vanishing into routine. Each tool had a practical purpose. The legend must hold at dinner. The signal must be brief. The exit must look like any other night. Buenos Aires offered a door that made sense on paper and in person. A wealthy returnee with family ties could invest, host, and meet the right officials without forcing a scene. The cover name, Kamal Amin Thaabet, carried money that matched manners and travel that matched stories. Real dinners, careful introductions, and small favors did the rest. From there, Damascus was one invitation away. The brief stayed strict. Reach circles that sit beside decisions. Parties, hunting trips, and base visits revealed more than briefings because pride filled the spaces between songs and toasts. A guest who asked for nothing could learn which road carried armor at night and which officer wanted a favor before promotion. Once access was held, reports turned from guesses into routes with names, dates, and distances. There was always a cost. Short signals had to stay short, or the room would answer. But when a burst lingered, direction-finding crews could triangulate the source. Years later, the service would state this plainly. Interception and triangulation closed the window that night. Not a single dramatic mistake. Eliyahu ben Shaul Cohen was born in Alexandria in 1924 to a Jewish family with roots in Aleppo. He grew up fluent in Arabic and Hebrew and later added English and French, the kind of range that helps a guest fit anywhere. In Egypt, his name reached security services more than once, and after rising pressure on Jews, he left for Israel in the mid-1950s. The skills that mattered most for this mission were not loud ones. He read people, listened more than he spoke, and remembered small things others forgot. In Israel, he first handled open-source Arabic material. The desk did not fit his temperament for long. Screening assessed caution, patience, and language control. Training focused on practical points. Shortwave discipline, basic ciphers, dead letters that pass without attention, and the social craft of speaking like a native son of Damascus. Instructors tested memory on street grids, voices, and room layouts. They worked on dialect to sand down traces that could raise a brow in a quiet bar. A legend took shape around a believable arc. The returnee from Argentina had family roots in Syria, a bachelor's schedule, money to invest, and manners that fit social circles where power gathered after hours. The early stage mattered more than any gadget. He learned how to host credibly, when to lend, when to introduce one guest to another, and when to let a story drift so someone else would fill the silence. But the mission also demanded a boundary. Attention is flattering. Access is the goal. By the time invitations arrived, the habits were set. He would keep reports tight, resist flourish, and file what could be checked. The legend had to feel natural to people who met him twice a week for months. That was the measure of readiness, not the range of the radio, not the number of codes, whether the room believed that Kamal Amin Thaabet belonged there every time the door opened. Objective: penetrate social and semi-official spaces in Damascus that sit adjacent to decisions and turn casual talk into routes, dates, and unit changes. Cover: wealthy Syrian expatriate returned from Buenos Aires to invest, host, and reconnect. The name Kamal Amin Thaabet arrives with believable letters, money that travels, and friends who vouch because favors were real. Terrain: Abu Rummaneh and nearby quarters where embassies, ministries, and intelligence buildings live inside walking distance. Apartments with salons allow controlled hosting. Hotels and private clubs allow movement under noise. But proximity also means patrols, informants, and neighbors who know when light patterns change. Constraints: short transmissions only, predictable patterns avoided, guests rotated to prevent repetition, loans and favors tracked to avoid debt spirals. The safest signals ride on normal nights, not on special ones. A safe room holds the set, and a second location holds backup. Gateways: intermediaries who open doors to officers, attachés, and party figures. The helpful investor profile lowers the barrier. He can ask about roads and cargo without sounding like an outsider because deals need trucks and schedules. Risk register: DF threat if bursts exceed plan and teams align bearings. Human trigger if a friend with ties to embassies draws attention that tech later confirms. Myth drift when popular anecdotes inflate expectations. Deliverables: route numbers, rotation dates, logistics hubs, water project equipment lists, and the kind of informal access that shows which colonel will ask for a favor before promotion. Validation: cross-check any salon claim with a second source within a week. If a road is named in talk, look for a matching change in convoy times. If a unit is said to rotate, watch mess deliveries and leave pass patterns. Room stories become useful only after a check. First, establish rhythm. Host on normal nights, not holidays. Keep guest lists mixed, but plausible. Rotate seating so two officers who should not meet do not meet. A small favor opens one door. A loan sets the next visit. No pressure, no obvious interest in restricted topics. Second, pattern the streets. Walk the same block at different hours to learn who watches and who just smokes. Count the stair lights. Test how long a lobby stays empty after the elevator closes. A good pattern is not a routine. It is a set of options that look like normal life. Third, identify the talkers. A colonel who brags after music is not the same as a major who brags before dinner. A convoy driver's cousin brings different value than a staff officer. When a guest mentions a road number twice, file it. When he names a month and a unit, do not react. Ask about something dull. Let him finish. Abu Rummaneh, after dusk. 10 people, low light, a map pinned as decoration. A guest explains that a convoy to the south will leave a day earlier because a commander insists on a hunting trip before a ceremony. He repeats a road number as a joke about bad pavement. No one treats it as sensitive in a private room. The host laughs, pours, and changes the subject. Later that night, a short message carries the road number, the moved date, and the commander's name. It is not a grand secret. It is a usable schedule. Cross-checks follow. At dawn, a friend mentions a fuel delivery moved up by a day. Another guest cancels a game because he is on the road. The pattern matches. The note goes up the chain with a simple tag: high confidence. This is how talk becomes roots. On the Golan stories, reports describe lines, bunkers, and artillery positions. A popular tale says shade trees later helped mark targets. It appears often in public retellings. But serious scholarship treats it as an unproven anecdote. We mark it as disputed and keep only what multiple sources can support. Waterworks matter more than anecdotes. When equipment lists and site names show up in talk, They match procurement and contractor movements. The timing lets aircraft find machines in the open. That kind of correlation turns a rumor into a strike plan. Effects belong to a wider intelligence picture, not to one person alone. But reliable inputs change priorities in real time, and that is measurable. The buildup also watches for reverse flow. If a neighbor changes sleep hours, if a doorman starts logging visitors, if the stairwell goes dark more often than before, note it. Human signs often arrive before technical ones. 2 small changes are noise, 3 are trend. The rule is simple. When trends touch signals, shorten transmissions further and widen exits. The plan for that week is conservative. 1 short transmission on a quiet night to move a date and confirm a rotation. Equipment is checked before dinner. The antenna can be placed and removed quickly. The desk is clear enough to pass a search that glances, not a search that lingers. The exit plan uses a back stair and a corner where a truck idles most nights. Evening passes like many others. Hosting feels routine, which is the point. 2 guests leave early because of a morning drive. No one asks for a second bottle. The room empties without comment. The set is prepared after the last knock. Timing puts the burst at a lull between patrol changes. The first click rides on a motorcycle backfire in the street. Signals travel farther than rooms. If the burst stays inside plan, it disappears into city noise. If it runs long, it becomes a line someone can follow. Tonight, a neighbor's radio is off, which makes the hallway quiet. Upstairs, a light that usually stays on goes dark. It is a small change, but it registers. The first seconds are clean. The second line takes longer than scheduled. A minor stumble adds a beat. It is not dramatic, but the clock does not care. But direction-finding teams do not need drama. Bearings align when transmissions last longer than planned. A crew down the street hears enough to call a second team. The corridor light cycles again. The plan says to stop. The plan is followed. Silence returns. The set is covered. A chair slides into place. If the sweep is not already moving, the exit can still work. If the sweep has orders, the exit becomes a choke point. There is no lookout tonight. That is the first bad sign. The second is the knock that waits for a breath and repeats. It is not a neighbor's knock. Doors open for many reasons. A landlord checks a leak. A friend stops by unannounced. A sweep arrives on a schedule that only one office knows. The difference is in how long they wait after the knock and how many shoes pause on the landing. The entry is controlled. It does not break the door. It uses the pressure of certainty. A checklist begins with the desk, the drawers, and the case that sits where a case should not sit. A second team notes cables that should not be there. A third team watches the stairwell while the room is photographed. Items go into bags with labels that will later appear in a file. At this point, intent is proven for the team, not for history. They have a set, codes, and a man who fits a profile they were told to watch. The scale of his work will be argued later. The immediate facts are simpler. A radio was used here. It sent more than once. Tonight it sent long enough for bearings to cross. Years later, the service states this in clear terms. Interception and triangulation did the work. Not a single theatrical slip. But small delays under pressure can create the time a city needs. Formal custody moves fast. A tribunal follows. Files grow around the items that left the room. There are names, dates, and routes in earlier reports that match events in the field. The legend ends where custody begins. The man in the file is now an accused spy. The public ending is known. On May 18, 1965, he is hanged at Marjah Square in Damascus after a military trial. Before the execution, he meets the city's chief rabbi and gives him a letter to pass to his family. The words survive because people carried them. The body does not return. The place of burial remains contested. Claims about strategic impact rise with time. Some say his routes and maps ensured victory 2 years later. The better way to say it is simpler and more accurate. His reporting fed a wider picture that others also built, and that picture shaped priorities and plans before 1967. But the exact weight of one source among many remains a matter of debate in serious histories, so we keep our language careful. Public memory adds stories. One famous tale says shade trees planted on the hills later marked targets. The image is strong, which is why it spreads. We file it as popular and label it disputed. When possible, we keep to items that show up in multiple independent accounts or in controlled files. In 2018, an official note breaks through routine. The agency recovers the wristwatch he wore in Syria and returns it to the family at a ceremony. It is a small thing that matters because it is tangible. It turns a story back into a person for a moment. In May 2025, a larger return follows. Approximately 2,500 documents and personal items linked to the case are brought to Israel in a move announced on the 60th anniversary of the execution. Reports describe letters, photos, forged passports, interrogation material, and apartment keys. Whatever the quiet path that moved the boxes, the effect is clear. Researchers now have primary material that will refine what we know. Units kept a few rules from this case on the wall. Signal discipline, short bursts, scheduled inside noise, and no repeats that let a city draw lines on a map. If a clock slips, stop. Do not finish a sentence just to finish it. Human patterning. Treat lookouts as part of the set, not a luxury. When neighbors or doormen change behavior, shorten everything. But do not overreact to one data point. 2 is caution. 3 is action. Social craft. Build access by giving, not by asking. A host is safer than a guest at questions. When pride starts listing dates, change the subject and file it later. Myth control. Mark stories that feel neat. If a detail appears only in one popular account, do not build plans on it. Anecdotes can live in memory and still be unhelpful for practice. Attribution discipline. Avoid single-source triumphs in public speech. Real work is a mosaic. Keeping credit modest keeps trust with colleagues and keeps the next case grounded. When primary files surface decades later, adjust the record. The 2025 archive will sharpen timelines, confirm some points, and cut others. Good practice welcomes that. The file closes with items in boxes and dates on labels, a watch on a table, a letter in careful script, a key on a ring that once opened a door in Abu Rummaneh. Families keep trying to bring a body home. Services keep reading the case to learn where time slips and why. The name stays because people say it out loud each year. The methods stay because they work when pride and noise tempt a longer story. As time passes, Eli Cohen's story unfolds, and his legend is taught not as myth but as method in services worldwide.